So, first off, I think it's a good idea to say a big thank you to the guys at HubSpot for putting this together, right? Just look at this. I am humbled to be here, and especially speaking to such a big crowd. So first off, thank you for your time and attention. And yeah, basically today what we're going to be speaking about is, as you know, or as you might not know, click. So I want to do an experiment before, and I know you're all going to hate this, but I don't get to speak to so many people so often, so what the heck. Everyone stand up. So that gets you off your asses, gets the laptops out of the way, and also gives us an opportunity to stretch. Yeah, everyone standing up? Okay, so to do some segmentation and understand the room a little bit better, I want first off, those of you who have run a split test of any sort, right? A split test, 3-way, 4-way, whatever, to sit down. Okay. And those of you still standing up, if you know what a split test is, you can sit down. Okay, so that gives me a very good, is anyone still standing up? Okay, that's good. So that gives me a good idea, segmentation. So thank you, you can all sit down. Great. So that means I'm only going to spend a few seconds on what a split test is, and then I'm going to just rush into it, okay? But yeah, but basically the objective of today is to look at the 5 things that you can do tomorrow to make your website start converting. And the reality is, you're probably not going to do that tomorrow, right? Because tomorrow's Friday after inbound. But let's say you're going to do, let's say the 5 things you can do on Monday, right? Or maybe Tuesday. So yeah, so the whole objective of today is to discover how your site is really being used and find your biggest opportunities for growth. And before we do that, I want to give some context about the person standing up here, right? Not because I want to show off or anything, but it just helps give some context of where I'm coming, and because I've made so many mistakes that, in a way, I would have loved to kind of hear this 12 years ago. But basically, I'm an entrepreneur and a consultant. I'm passionate about UX and marketing, but I ended up specializing in conversion rate optimization, right? Which is a big word. Blah, 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 blah. So we're going to dissect that a little bit and bring it down to the basics today. But basically, I've been lucky enough to have so many businesses trust me with running hundreds of, if not thousands of tests across the years. And I've learned a thing or two of what to do and what not to do, and generated quite a lot of money for these guys as well. But obviously, my baby is Hotjar. It's the culmination of my career, and it's something that I built that I wanted to use myself several years ago, but we're not going to be talking about Hotjar today. We're going to be talking about what's kind of I've learned from this career so far. But before we do that, just a quick overview of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So the 5 things that you're going to do on Tuesday are you're going to leverage the power of empathy, and we're going to talk about what empathy is. We're going to talk about how to find the biggest hole in your bucket, how to analyze your key pages. I'm going to give you some tips about that. It's going to be fun. And then how to zoom out, not that far, to see the big picture. And then finally, we're going to look at some quick wins, right? So it's going to be 4 points of theory, and then I'm just going to give you all the best secrets ever. Good? So you just have to stay to the very end. So, one of the big things that I learned during this career was there's just too much data, right? Like, we all know this. There's just so many tools that we have access to and that we can use. And the problem is that when we have so much data, it's so easy to get lost behind our desks looking at displays and looking at the numbers and feeling comfortable in our knowledge. But the reality is, coming from a CEO who does software, this is awesome. The reality is that the best tools are free. Because thank God, there is yet no businessman who has managed to do a SaaS package around your ears, your eyes, your mouth, your brain. Because as marketers, our biggest priority is to get out there, to listen, and to talk, and to understand why our visitors, why our customers are behaving or not behaving. And again, sometimes these tools can be a barrier to that. Right? We get lost in all these numbers and lines. So don't let that get in your way. Your biggest wins are going to be coming from you getting out there and discovering what persuades them to act or not act. And then another thing that I learned is, especially from a context of data, is that one size does not fit all. So in other words, translation, best practices suck. And the problem is, the big problem is kind of partly in this room, right? We all love our blog posts, we all love our shares and our subscribers, and it's so tempting to write blog posts about the 7 things you should do to skyrocket your conversion rate. And the reality is, it's very easy to become a target of that and to think, oh shit, these are the 7 things we have to do. But the reality is that what's best for me is not best for you. What's best for my user is not best for your user, right? Just like what's best for my blog is not best for your blog. So let's always put those best practices into context, which is they are one of the best ways to get traffic to your blog, and hence is not always the best way to get results on your site. So if I dissect a little bit my career, and I look at it as like an evolution, I would kind of split it into 4 phases. The first stage is where we were split testing elements. So we changed the color, we changed the size of the button, position of the button. So elements and styling. This is where I looked like a monkey, right? First phase of the evolution. Second phase is where I moved to doing more testing on layout, right? How do we move the actual page? And what is the best way to present the information? And we were doing something back then called multivariate testing. So you basically kind of throw in as many variations you can for different sections of the page, and you just let it sort the shit out. And that's a very bad idea. So I'm seeing some people writing down notes. Don't do that. So, and that kind of gave us some wins, but it wasn't working. So then we moved to what's called high velocity testing. So this is over a span of years, right? And we focused more on persuasion and copy. And basically what we were doing was we were focusing more on how do we persuade more people to act, and we were testing as much as we could. And this was the third phase. This is where I'm morphing slowly from a monkey into a kind of an ape and becoming a little bit more human, right? In the evolution. And this did give us wins, but they tended to be small wins, and it took so long to get the win, right? Because there's this whole statistical confidence with testing. And then the fourth phase is where everything changed. This was pre-Hotjar, right? So this has nothing to do with Hotjar. But it was the phase where I started to realize and discover other companies and how they were doing it, the eBays, the Dells, and how they invested so much into understanding their users, going into their homes, doing ethnographic testing, working closer with UX, like understanding what's going on and what are the biggest pains of their users. So this is the phase where I became like Homo erectus, right? And I suddenly started to understand that if I digged into like the user behavior and their feedback, which explains and maps back to that behavior, then I started to get bigger wins. And the beauty of it was that we were doing much less tests. So we're doing much less tests, but much bigger wins. And this whole evolution ape-monkey thing that I'm talking about, it essentially taught me one key thing, which I already kind of knew, but I hadn't embraced yet, which is testing is only a measure. It's not a tool. And it's confusing because there are tools out there to do testing. But it's not a tool. Just like if you were cooking, you wouldn't use a measuring cup. As in, you would use a measuring cup, but you wouldn't rely on the measuring cup, right? The measuring cup is only there to check if what you're doing is right, the next step is correct or not. But you wouldn't say, okay, what are we going to cook today? Let's just grab random ingredients, throw them in a measuring cup at different lengths and heights, and see which one is the best height. That wouldn't make sense. That would be too random. It's going to take you years to cook up something half decent. So kind of it applies, right? And this is the big learning I want to share with you, which is if you do your research right and you're setting the right hypothesis, the split test thing idea is there to confirm that you're pretty much not fucking up the website. It's not there to tell you, you made some money, you're getting a raise. That's not the point. It's just the final step at the end of all the work, right? And I'm going to help you today to get there, how to go down that route. So essentially, what you need is some perspective. So you need to step back from all the data. You need to step back from all these biases and best practices and whatnot, and really dig into what matters. And I like to call this the big picture. So this is the thing that this you can take a photo of and take notes about. So this is a kind of a model that I created over the years, which is kind of the framework upon which I want to first understand what's going on with a site before I make any change or do any test. What the hell is going on? Oops. What is going on? And we're going to dig into this later on. It's one of the steps when we said take a step back, right? So that's coming later. So yeah, we talked about your tools which are the most free, the free tools which are the most valuable. So let's just jump into step one, right? So empathy. Now the best way to explain empathy is an interesting story about a fisherman in Long Island. So I love how as soon as I say fisherman, everyone looks up. It's like, what the hell, man? It's like story, fisherman. Oh, this is interesting. His name is re-anchor back. His name is Captain John Road. And basically, this guy had a tiny boat and used to go out with a rod, and he was out fishing pretty much dozens of vessels. They used to go up with dozens of fishermen on each, right? So he had some kind of trick. So a local journalist went to interview him. He was like, how the hell do you do this? How do you go out? He's like, see, the biggest problem that the other fishermen have is that they think like fishermen. I think like a fish. And this is my invitation to you, right? Start thinking more like a fish. And if you are going to think like a fish, you're going to need this. It's empathy. And empathy has nothing to do with sympathy, being nice, or like being aware. It's something you can learn, right? It's observation. It's trying to get into your user's shoes and understand what they're going through. So empathy is step one. And I'm going to give you some tips of how to empathize. Now, the most basic way to empathize is to actually experience your site like your user would. Now, the reality is that most of you have probably never done this, but what I suggest is clear out an hour or two from your schedule, sit down, open up your site on the typical path or your client site that you would want the visitor to take, record your screen and actually do it yourself. Do it properly, the whole thing. Whip out the credit card, like you can always get a refund, right? So just do the whole thing, right? Experience it, but importantly, record it. I even record my face. So then when I'm really pissed off, I can look at the camera and say, address the developer, like, you're gonna fucking fix this. And there's two software that I've used. These are brilliant for doing this, right? Just record the screen, have it on your device, and then you can always go back to it and quickly like reference interesting points and screenshot. And it's really important to record the video because it's happened to me so many times. You know how dynamic sites work and stuff? You've gone through an experience like, shit, that's really bad. But now all of a sudden there's no way for me to go back and recapture it. So it's really important to kind of journal it in a way. I like to do this literally every month with Hotjar. I go through the whole experience myself. And then the next step is there are actually sites like usertesting.com where you can recruit panels to do this for you, right? And I recommend that you do both. Like you do yourself and you have other people do it as well. Because obviously there are certain things that you're biased about that they're obviously not gonna be biased about themselves. So recruiting a panel is extremely powerful. Now the one step above this of not using usertesting.com is to actually recruit your own panel. And there are many tools that do this. Hotjar is one of them. So you incentivize, right? So at Hotjar we say, we're gonna give you a t-shirt, or when we have like a waiting list, we're gonna bump you up the queue, but you have to come on Skype with my team and you're gonna show them how it is to actually use our site and how much it sucks, right? And we always tell them, like, be direct, be blunt. We really want to hear brutal feedback. But then, if you want to automate this and do it at volume and do it in a more quantitative way, then you can actually record your own users. So this is, again, something Hotjar does and other tools do, but this is probably the best way to empathize. It's like looking over the shoulder, like hundreds of your customers or users and seeing what they do. And this is extremely powerful because you can literally see the pain that they feel, where they stop, where they pause. And this is an example of what it would look like on your site, right? So what I typically recommend is that you look at least 200. Some of you would be like, 200? Yes. Rewards come with pain, right? So look at 200 of these, and it will be so obvious to you what you need to fix. But the key here, is just so it's very clear, is that you want to look at 200 sessions of people converting, right? Many of our customers say, but I want to see where people are leaving. But that's not going to tell you as much as looking at, remember the empathy, thinking like a fish. Where are your customers, the qualitative, right, the most qualified people to give you this feedback? Where are these people stopping, pausing, hesitated, confused? As you see this pattern, out of 200, 30, 40 people are confused with the checkout process. 40, 50 people were just pausing on the pricing page. And you could clearly see they're completely lost there. So this is extremely powerful. And one thing to do, similar to recording yourself, here you want to kind of take notes. So it's the same thing. So if you discover something, you can go back. So you can take notes, you can do tags. All the software out there that does this offers this. So it's a very easy way for you to kind of go back to that later on. And here's an example of how this is kind of benefited the company, right? So PrestaShop was one of our early customers. And what they did was they started doing recordings on their own beta. So they had this new e-commerce shop that they were shipping, right? And they started doing recordings because they noticed something really weird, which is as soon as people were signing up for a store, they had a really good conversion rate, but many of them weren't actually using the store. And they're like, this is really weird. Why are people not using the store? But then in the recordings, they could actually visualize that many of them were just scrolling to the bottom and then, I didn't create a store, let me create a store. And they were getting stuck in this loop until they'd just basically give up and say bye-bye. So they quickly redesigned, did a test, and saw this have a huge impact on usage, and obviously had a big drop on the rate at which stores were being created, right? So ironically, in a way, it's kind of the opposite of what the analytics or the numbers or the dashboard would be telling you, but because it's based on how people are actually behaving, then you can actually see what matters and why people are getting confused. And then obviously you share it with the team, and this is literally the reaction you're going to get. We have our dev team saying, oh my God, is this really being used in this way? It looks more something like this realistically, so these are the guys at Unbounce. And it's so powerful to show the team, to show the dev team, the marketing team, what's actually happening. How the visitors that are being acquired are actually using the site, and how the people that are actually using what we built are actually using it, right? And that is super powerful to bring the whole team and give them empathy. Get the whole team to think more like fish. So, to summarize, the first step towards optimizing, before you start even thinking about split tests, is to really see your site through the eyes of your users. This is key, this is critical, because this is going to change completely your perception of the data. The moment you start to see how they're behaving, you're going to start having what we call these aha moments. So that's why the bounce rate is so high. That's why no one's engaging with this feature. So it gives you context. Second, the leaky bucket. Now, this is where it can get a little bit confusing. In the beginning, when I kind of came across the whole idea of inbound, I realized that CRO and inbound have a completely different idea of what a funnel is. This led to quite a few
confusing conversations. So I'm going to focus on what the CRO world calls a funnel, right? So essentially, it's more the idea of how many people are coming to your site and make it through at the end, right? So how many people actually land on the homepage and then actually make it to conversion within a session or within a visit, right? Whereas in inbound, it's more related to the lead and how you nurture and whatnot, right? So just so it's clear, and so it's less confusing, here our focus is more within the context of the site. Now, I've never kind of liked the word funnel in this context, because when you think about it, in conversion, it's the whole idea of having 100 people enter the funnel and then one comes out, right? But I hate it because the funnel is made of plastic, so I'm always thinking, where the hell has everyone else gone? It's like, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't hold, right? So instead, I like to call it a treasure map. So the whole idea is that when you build a site, ideally the site should be like a treasure map. There should be an ultimate goal, and in a way, your persuasion techniques and the way you're designing the site should be leading towards your visitors making it to the final threshold, right? And this becomes interesting because especially if people, let's say, were drinking while doing this treasure map, you're starting to identify where people are just giving up. It's like, fuck it, I can't make it to the end, right? And the more you identify where that's happening, if you're the event organizer, that's the point where you can say, this is where we need to make the clues better, right? This is where it's not obvious. So this is the whole concept of a funnel. Now, let's make this interesting and look at the funnel of Hotjar, right? So this is what the breakdown of traffic on our site looks like. And you'll notice what's interesting, we were kind of shocked by this, is that we have a lot of drop-offs on the registration, the first step. So as people arrive on Hotjar and they go to sign up, a lot of them are like, and they're dropping out, right? So this was the most important step for us to focus on as opposed to other steps. Just like a surgeon, right? If you go to see a surgeon, he's not going to be, let me see this tiny vein in your finger. No, he's going to focus on the arteries, where there's the big flow, the big blockage, and that's where you should be focusing on as well. Now, if you do not have a treasure map in place, there are tools that allow you to see how people are using the site, right? So a perfect example of a tool is Flow in Google Analytics. There's a great way to see how your visitors are actually moving around, and then again, look at where you're getting the most drop-offs, and do better clues, do a better path towards the end goal. Now, the key is that similar to like we talked about empathy and recordings, is that once you have a funnel in place, it's very powerful to then go in and watch the people that are actually abandoning at that step. And with Hotjar, you can do that, and more importantly, you can then filter down and see how many people are doing this, but they've seen a lot of pages and they've been on the site for a long time. And why is this important? This means that these guys are really, really frustrated, right? So they've been through a lot of pages, they've spent a lot of time on the site, and now they're suddenly leaving. So this is where you want to, again, empathize and see how exactly were they using the site. So to summarize, because resources are not unlimited, it is really key when you're going to test that you test in the right place first. It's so easy to do split tests or make changes on these tiny veins in the fingers, right? Be aware of that and avoid that. So optimizing is a prioritization game. When you think about it, you have a limited amount of slots available for you to test, right? Resources are limited, you're at the office a limited amount of time, and there's a limited amount of traffic that you can test on. So testing in the right place is probably one of the best pieces of advice I can give you. Analyze key pages. This is where it's going to get interesting. So now we know where our users are dropping off the most, right? So this is where we want to dig in deeper. An example would be we wanted to dig in more into our pricing page. So a heat map is a great way to see the what. What are visitors doing? So they're clicking on certain elements. We saw in the recording they're moving around, but they're not interacting with this part of the page. So this is where you start to connect the what and the why. So this is where you ask a question. So is our pricing clear? Is there anything we should change? If you're seeing them interact with a very specific piece of the page, maybe ask a question focused on that part, right? So experiment with the questions. And in our case, we discovered something tremendously impactful on the company. We pretty much realized that the way people were using the page and the answers to the question were completely disconnected. And basically, we realized that we were confusing our users completely. So what we thought they thought was sampling rate was actually something completely different. So this has had a tremendous impact on the business, and we're redesigning completely the way we do our pricing, the way we explain how the product works, and we've actually just released this split test after months of work. So it's not very iterative, but it's has big impact on the business and the way the users understand how the product works. So here are some other examples, right? In this case, you can see visitors are just lost. They're interacting with so many things on the page. So again, the what with the why. So it makes sense to ask the question, what's the purpose for visiting us today? What would you like to achieve, right? Since they're so lost, maybe, again, the treasure map, we're not giving a good enough clue. It's not very clear what the main call to action is. Or if the opposite is happening, I like to call this the information test. So it's like the visitor is saying, grab that area and just resize that and make that the site, right? The page. Because that top area there says services and products. No one wants to see this big Chinese dragon. We just want to see what services you offer. So the user is telling you that's what we want. So quick question, what's missing on this page? So you can understand what type of services or how the services should be shown. Or ask the question, what services are you interested in? The services that are mentioned the most, give those the most visibility. This is what I like to call the deep blue sea. So this is a scroll map, and you can see this page is actually the height of 2 Hasselhoffs. So it's a very long page, and yet no one's making it to the end. So the deep blue sea here is where the content goes to die. So you should be asking the question, if you could change anything on this page, what would that be? Or if you could find anything right directly like on this page, what should we put at the very top of this page? Ask questions, interact, right? Listen. Become the fish. Now, I've actually analyzed like close to 300 heat maps, thanks to our customers. If you search, if you Google or Bing for 8 heat map tests, you can find all the information about that. So to summarize this section, for the biggest wins, uncover both the what and the why of your user's behavior. You need to see both sides of the coin, and that's how you're going to get the biggest wins. Because again, you know what to put in the measuring cup. So the big picture. Now, we talked before about this, right? The drivers, the hooks, and the barriers. So the idea here is just like if you're playing chess, in order for you to make that next move, you need to see the whole board. So this is pretty much the concept. So drivers. Why are people coming to their site? Why are people coming to your site, right? Are they marketers? Are they managers? Are they looking for new software? Do they need to replace software? So understanding what is driving them will impact completely the way you write the copy and how you design the page, or what will you test. Barriers is typically what most of us are most excited about. Why are they leaving? So where and why, right? Asking the question, seeing the biggest drop-off point. And then finally, hooks, which is the most interesting one and why most people kind of not aware of this. But it's basically, why did they what persuaded them to act? So if you ask your customers that actually converted, what was it that persuaded you in the end, right? The more you understand that secret sauce, those small things that push them over that final hurdle, you're going to know what that golden nugget is. What you should be pushing on your pages as being your key thing, your key differentiator, or why they should proceed, right? Put that in your treasure map. But you need to know that. So this is an example of the big picture, right? So this is what we call the big picture worksheet. So we kind of fill it in at Hotjar. And this shows, based on, because we've looked at the barriers, right, how we filled it out. So we found that the registration page with 80% drop-off over 2 steps, which is massive. The main reason for that was time and value. So people were saying, I don't have time. What is the value? Why should I be doing this? So that already puts us in a position to know what we should be testing, right? But we're still missing the big picture, which is, why are they coming, right? Because that might give us a clue as to why they're saying time and value. And the ones that did make it through, what made them overcome the time and value objections? So how do we fill out those missing parts? We do a survey, the most sexy thing ever, right? Everyone hates surveys. So the key question to ask in surveys, and yes, you send an email, you do a survey, or you pop it up when people convert, is, in order to understand drivers, in one sentence, describe yourself. And not 6 questions with checkboxes and ranges. Just be human. Ask, how would you describe yourself, right? Then yes, do the hard work, go through it and decipher it. You can segment and specialize and make your copy much better, more targeted these people. And then what are the main challenges you face on a daily basis? Let's get to know these guys. Let's see what are their biggest issues. We can speak to these challenges in our copy. And then hooks. What was the one main factor that persuaded you to choose us? Right? You're going to get your secret sauce. And then please list the top 3 biggest fears or concerns that nearly stopped you from using us. You can eliminate your conversion killers. So you might think, no one's going to reply to the survey. They will. Because the reality is not everyone is an entrepreneur. Not all entrepreneurs and marketers might reply to surveys, but most of your customers and users care about your product or your service. They want to make it better. So the key is, though, you want to incentivize a little bit. So you might want to offer a prize. But then the counter to that, so it really works to have a subject line saying, win an iPad Pro with Hotjar, right? So that's going to boost open rate. We know that. But then you want to counter that by saying, please be brutal and direct. It's impossible to offend us. Last thing you want is them thinking that if they say nice things, you're going to give them the iPad. And then, then comes the hard work. So you put all the responses on the left in an Excel spreadsheet, and then you start tagging these guys. And you start identifying what are your biggest objections, your biggest hooks, and whatnot. And this is our final worksheet. So basically, this shows us that the biggest challenge is that time is a big challenge. So that goes back to the registration point, right? So they're saying time. We know they're digital marketers. We know they have higher data needs. They're concerned about cost price. Okay, now I'm starting to get the big picture. I can make my next chess move. I can make a split test that's going to fucking nail it. Because now I'm going back to my registration page, and I'm like, no wonder. Because this just looks scary, and I'm not communicating any value, and I'm saying there's another freaking step after this. This is going to take time. So now I have context around how I can improve this. And this is what we did. So we redesigned it completely, more with marketers in mind. We focused on time, we focused on value, we made it more interesting, more appealing. And this is actually something that we now have live. It looks much better than this, because these were my mock-ups and then designers fixed it. But the big lesson to be learned is, if you cannot see the big picture, you're going to fail to make the changes that really matter. Okay, the quick wins. This is going to be a quick run-through, okay? But it's good. This I know has kept you all here till the end. So, first one is build up commitment. Second is leverage your social proof. C is just kill shit. And finally, give a reason why. So, first one, the opposite of building up commitment is showing me a form like this. Especially if I'm on the sofa with my kids running around and my wife is telling me, you need to help me with it. I was like, oh. And your form might not look as scary as this, but many ways that we build sites make people scared. It's like, I don't want to do this. So you need to build up commitment. This is something that I had done back in the ages for a client of mine. They had a site that was scary, and we built up commitment by making it nice and simple and easy. Like, just come in, click a button. 2 steps in, you won't want to leave. So you build up commitment. There's another example. They had like an 8-field form with no explanation of the fields, and so we made it a little bit easier. Yeah, even Facebook could potentially improve this a little bit. But if you want to learn more about building up commitment, it's a very interesting way to improve conversion rates But it's basically the idea of building up with small steps. And you have to test it, right? It doesn't always work. But this book by Cialdini speaks a lot about this. Really interesting stuff. Social proof. Tell me how many big customers you have, the range of customers. Make me feel comfortable. If you don't have big customers, tell me where you've been featured. Haven't been featured? Get fucking featured. You need social proof. Another thing you can do is include a question in your survey, which is, how would you describe me to your friends? Right? How would you describe the business to your friends? How would you describe the product to your friends? And the ones that are awesome, we love it, it's awesome. Send an email saying, hey, we'd love to feature it on the site. Oh, of course, yeah, go ahead. Can we have your photo? Yes, okay. Build up commitment, and you get social proof. And then throw it on the site, right? And some of the guys that did this really well, like Basecamp, right? It's like awesome, specificity, like couldn't be better than that. Social proof is a quick win. Very easy to get there, very powerful stuff. Kill stuff. I've spoken to so many agencies in CRO. Most consultants start with just eliminating stuff. So 99%, there's a big chance that by just removing stuff, you're going to have a big impact. So one way we like to do this is look at a heat map and see what are the things no one is interacting with, right? Start by killing those things. Another example here. No one wants to see these sliders. And like, I didn't come to your site to see an ad, right? So just kill these things. And give a reason why. We are humans. We need a reason to act. So Intercom do this really good. They say the old way, right? This is the reason, like get rid of this stuff. At Hotjar, we have a vision. We want to change the way the web is built and improved by leveraging feedback. So we communicate that. And then we say, here's a t-shirt, here's a hoodie for helping us out, right? The more you give a reason why, the more you can get more conversions. So explain. These are two extreme examples. But if you're asking for a phone number, tell me why the hell you need the phone number. Don't get all psycho on me. It's like, say, we're going to use your number to maybe give you a friendly call and give you help. Or if you need my email, why do you need the email? Like, just give a reason. It can be very powerful. So yeah, to summarize, the 5 key takeaways. Become your user. Find those conversion killers. Focus on those big holes first, right? Resources are so limited and precious. Be careful how you use them. Connect the what and the why to get those aha moments. Take a step back and look at the big picture, or else you can't make that next big, awesome move, and then get some big, quick wins. There's actually a 6th one, right? Just really quickly. I wasn't sure how politically correct I had to be, but the 6th one is then give a shit. Once you've uncovered these issues and you know the pains of your users, go and fix them. I had an e-commerce site I helped out. They asked the question, what's missing on the site? And in the word cloud, there was this big word which said, wait. I was like, guys, you don't have the weight of bicycles on the site? Like, no, we never got down to doing that. It's like, but it's the most important thing. Like, I'm a cyclist. If I don't know the weight, how can I buy a bike? If anything, you should be building an experience that I put in my weight, what size of storage I have, my height, and you suggest the bike, right? So give a shit. And thank you very much.